Hello, everyone, to day three of Open Education Week 2024. We're excited in order to continue the discussion around the ADAPT homework system. Uh, Yesterday, we went over creating courses and adding assignments to the course. We also went into a bit more detail about the nature of the assignments and then adding questions to the assignments, but we didn't get into creating questions because that it requires a bit more time than what we have available. Today's conversation, we're going to backtrack a little bit and talk about adding assignments to existing courses and then start to move forward about some of the additional properties associated with those assignments that we didn't have time in order to be able to go through in the last slot. And then we'll go into a bit more detail about the questions and even perhaps go into editing questions or creating new questions if time permits and people have an interest in order to pursue that. So we need to start by having a course. um, so I should probably ask here, are there people here that are waiting for an account on Adapt? I can quickly create access codes for people that you can use in order to generate an account, and that way you can do or follow through with what we're doing on your side. No comment at all. Like I said, I feel like I'm teaching a class when I'm giving these things. So I'm going to assume that you guys have accounts. If you don't have accounts, please paste it into the chat, adapt accounts, and we can move from there. I deleted the course that I created before, so I'm going to create a new course, and I'm going to call it Adapt Assignments uh, number 2. Uh, and again, we discussed all these different aspects. They are not important for our discussion. I'm going to save. And now I've created an empty course. I'm going to make it available. I'm going to go into the empty course. And not surprisingly, it has no assignments into it. So the idea behind Adapt is you have courses, courses have assignments, assignments have questions. And then below that, we have a library of 220,000 questions that you can grab and reuse in these assignments. So again, this is going over what we discussed in the last video. We want to be able to add an assignment to our course. We can either add existing assignments via importing, or we can create new assignments from scratch. So since we have a bit more time than we have last time, let's go into importing an assignment. To import an assignment, you need to identify a course that you want to bring the assignment in from that original source. That means that you need to be able to know which course and which assignment that you want. In this case here, I can browse through either my courses, browse through Commons, which are the set of courses that are curated by the curation team, or all public courses that includes Commons, but also includes all faculty that make their courses public. Now, many courses are not public, they're private, which means they're not meant to be shared with other faculty. And then correspondingly, you're not going to be able to see that. But again, that conflicts a little bit with the sharing as caring model around OER. So I'm just going to grab all public courses, and then I need to select a course. It grabs a whole bunch, and I'm going to grab, let's say, um, we can, if I type in here, I can type in communication. So let's say we did John Perez at Kenyatta College. That's the course, and then I can identify that, well, there's only one assignment in that course. Let's just grab this general chemistry course, and I'm going to grab that assignment number 8. I have the choice in order to bring in the entire assignment with its questions, or just the assignment properties itself without any questions. And there are reasons why I may want to do that. One is for standardization. I'm just going to grab properties and questions, and I'm going to import it, and it brought that in. It comes in with the dates and times that are connected to the original assignment, which has been closed. So in other words, the date that we have is no longer in between these two. If I click on the assignment, I can then go in and see the questions that are connected to that assignment. These are all auto-graded questions based off of web work. There's a series of points. Each question has a solution. We go through a lot of effort in order to try to make as many solutions as possible to be pedagogically useful. This is an example of a pedagogically useful question, solution, so that students can read and learn from the solution and not just be able to check what their answer happens to be. So a lot of our effort, again, is to rebuild these solutions so they're useful for people. And we have a team of students and faculty in order to facilitate the construction of these things. So at this point here, every solution is reflected here. You can take a look and see what they happens to be. This one here is relatively straightforward. It's just text-based, depending upon what the question is. It doesn't require math and such like that. Again, we take this very seriously. Now, if I were to create a new assignment, it would look very similar, but I actually could probably go through making a new assignment because it will reintroduce us to those properties. So the new assignment comes in and introduces a series of a modal, this little pop-up here with some questions that we're interested in order to address. For example, the assignment name, I'm going to call this assignment 1. A public description that we want students to be able to see, or faculty if they're doing searches off of it. This is the best assignment in the world. Okay, private description, I hate this assignment. Okay. Only I and other faculty that may be adopting that assignment will get the private description. It's meant in order to have private notes that I don't want other people to see. It's useful at the end of class in order to write down, in order to be able to have a summary that says this assignment, I want to be able to modify or update it in the next time I do so. I have the ability in order to dictate that the questions in this assignment can be used summatively or formatively. Summative means that if I use them, students have to sign in in order to access it. Formative means that they don't need to sign in. So if I give a link to that question or embed that question into a different place, like a textbook, a learning management system, or some other website, I can go about doing that. Most of the time, I'm just going to keep it summatively because that's what people care about. I can designate if I have a template. And a template is basically, after I go through all this process, I can save it as a default set of values here, because I'm cataloging a whole bunch of not catalog, I'm indicating a whole bunch of options, and I may want to use those same options for another assignment. So if I'm creating 5 assignments that are all meant to be used in the same way, this provides a mechanism that I don't need to go through each of these steps every single time that I create an assignment, which can be quite daunting. I have only one right here, which is delayed, no late, absolute points in homework. But most people here, you haven't created a template, so you don't have it on here. You can see templates under dashboard when you don't have the modal up in order to review them or to add to them. So anyways, I'm going to choose this as homework, which is just like what you'd expect a learning management system to organize these things, because we organize this as a grade book on our side. But if you happen to have your learning management system coupled to your course, then the grade book is going to be used on the learning management system when scores are reflected or transferred over there. I can decide how I want the grading to go, either based on performance, or based on completion, where completion largely means if they've submitted it, then they get the points that are connected to that. I'm going to keep it at performance. Each time you see these little question marks right here, if you hover over it, it'll pop up with this little warning, not warning, it'll come up with a hint or some contextual help in order to guide what these things mean. So if you get confused, you can use it as a mechanism to help move you forward. Then we have the choice of points. We can either decide points based on each question, or points that's set up for the entire assignment and then is distributed equally to all the questions in the assignment. This is convenient in order to say that if you have 10 different assignments, for example, due every week, and you want it to be 100 points per assignment, irrespective of whether it happens to be 8 points, 8 questions, 9 questions, 10 questions, or 11 questions, or how many questions off there. It will evenly distribute it so that students always have the same number for that respective assignment that's out there. Right now, it's set up as specific, indicating it at the question level, not at the assignment level. This right here is just a default number of points that we write down there, which is 10 points. That can be changed once you've actually created the course, added the questions to the course. And then now comes the more complex aspect, which is the assignment type. So we have 4 types of assignments that you can select from. One is real time, one is delayed, the other one's learning tree, and the other one is clicker. And each type has a different interface and a different use case for the questions that are housed inside. The learning trees assessments are assessments that host learning trees. Uh, because learning trees have a different infrastructure and how students interact with it than more traditional homework problems, they need to be designated as a learning tree. I'll be discussing learning trees tomorrow at the next step of this adapt conversation. Real time is the type of is the structure for the assignment such that students can submit and get response back immediately after submitting. So it's really great for formative use. For practice, you want the students to get the responses instantly. They also have the ability to get instant solutions, those pedagogical solutions I have down there, but you have the choice in order to detach that and give that to them at a later time. Uh, Delayed grading is a more traditional way of grading where students submit the scores, submit their values. They could be open-ended, they can be auto-graded, and then they are released to the students at a later date, typically after it's done. This is useful because you want to use this as a summative evaluation approach rather than as a formative, continually updating learning from the experience that you have off of there. And then you have the ability to decide if you want to release the scores or release the statistics or release the solutions independently after the fact. And clicker assessments means that this assignment is designed for being used as an in-class clicker system, such that students can bring their own device, whether it happens to be a phone or it happens to be a computer. We will be releasing our phone app soon, so that you can actually have a native technology that runs Adapt. They can do homework, but they can also provide a platform in order to have feedback to in-class polling. So that if the instructor asks a question for students, students can actually respond directly via their phone or their computer that's out there. Um, this provides an opportunity for ADAPT to not only take the place of costly homework infrastructure, but to also take the place of costly in-class polling infrastructure. For example, iClicker, they can oftentimes range from $35 to $55 per student per term. You can designate how many number of attempts that are possible. Right now, we have it set to 1 to 4 and unlimited, which covers most of the gamut. We may be inclined in order to change that to a number that you type in. And basically, it will collect the best score for the entire period of time or the entire number of attempts that they put in. Now, that may be modulated uh, by penalties if they do things late. Uh, uh, but nonetheless, it provides opportunity in order to have multiple submissions. If you have hints for your questions, you provide the opportunity in order to let students access those hints. If you decide you want to access them, you can even give a penalty if they want to access them. So in other words, you can have a more detailed help, but they need to pay in order to get that help. Otherwise, they may just be going straight to the penalty and not try to conceptualize and understand and address the question from scratch. I'm going to put this as no. Solutions available automatically. Because this question was set for real time, I can provide the opportunity that students can get the solution to that question real time. So they can submit the answer, they can identify the answers correct. If I decide that I want them to have unlimited time, they can keep on trying and get the different scores. And at some point, they give up. I'm not sure if that's the appropriate term for it on the button, but basically they say, I'm going to stop submitting as a student and I want to see the answer and I want to go through the answer. And it may be that they've done well or they haven't done well, but they want to be able to evolve and move forward and not get stuck in a cul-de-sac. So the solution is available right there. Uh, if the question is meant to be algorithmic, meaning that the numbers in the question or some other aspects of the question can vary at the student level. So you can make it so that every student gets the same question, but they'll get different numbers for the question or different order for things. If you click yes on here, you'll be activating that. Now, in order for that to be active, the question itself needs to be designed in order to be used algorithmically. And many questions are not designed in that way because the nature of creating questions in that way can take a bit of time in order to be able to do. Moreover, some technologies that we have in ADAPT, like H5P and native technologies, have no flexibility for algorithmic, perhaps with the exception of random ordering of multiple choices that students can have, but they don't have the more sophisticated algorithmic capabilities that WebWork and iMathAS have, the other two technologies underlying ADAPT. So right now it's collect no. We will expand this in order to make it to say yes, such that every student has a different question, or yes for the assignment, so that if you were to use this in a different course, it would have a different algorithm. So each student in that course will have the same number, same question, but if you use it in the next course, they will have a different set of numbers. So it's meant in order to facilitate communication and interactivity so that the algorithmic doesn't hinder that, which is the whole point of why we introduce algorithmic, but to make it so that the students from last year don't just give the scores and the values to the students of the year that's taking it, because it will be varied off of that. That should be relatively easy for us to implement, but it's not there now. Now comes into a little bit more complexity, and that's the late policy. So we have three types of late policies. We have do not accept late, which means that you have a deadline when the assignment is closed. At that point, students can't submit, period. You can decide that you want to accept but mark late. So that means that they submit, but you have a little asterisk in your grade book that you're able to look at and say, yes, the student submitted it late. And then you can decide what you want to do with that off of the ADAPT platform or off of Canvas. And it may be useful in order to identify trends or issues with students that may require some intervention. Lastly is accept late with a deduction. So in this case here, if we indicate that, this is where a bit of complexity comes in, because if you have a deduction, you need to indicate what the deduction will be. So right now you can say it's a percent. So you can say 5% points will be 5% will be removed from uh, the performance if they submit it after the initial deadline. You have the ability in order to add that or put that deduction in action multiple times. So you can do it once, so it's late and that's that. Or you can say that every 5% every 24 hours is available. So now every 24 hours, the students get a greater deduction, 5%, 10%. We don't compound or do anything like that. It's just a simple addition off of it. What we don't have on here that we will implement is a floor so that it won't go all the way to zero. You can actually indicate that you may make it lose 5% per day until you get to 50%, so 10 days. And then if they want to submit anytime after that, they can get up to 50% credit. It provides a perpetual carrot for students in order to do problems, because if you actually remove all the credit, all the incentive for doing the problems, then they have no interest in order to do them, even if it's beneficial for their learning experience in order to do so. That should be available sometime in the next handful of months. Last option right here, before we get into a few additional features below, is the if you want the scores to be folded into the weighted score or the non-weighted score. This is useful if you are not, if you're using ADAPT as a learning management system in the grade book. So you can basically say this question here is extra credit, or this question here is practice. And this is a way in order to fold it out in a straightforward manner. You can provide instructions to the students. That's at the top of the assignment in order to give them some feedback off of it. You may give them links that are particularly important for them to peruse in order to answer their questions. It's up to you. This is a full HTML interface, so you can have images, you can embed videos, you can embed audio into these instructions for students in order to tap into. Okay. So now comes random sampling. Random sampling is not the same as algorithmic, but it has a similar benefit. And the point is that instead of having an algorithmic, every student getting the same question, but with different numbers, this right here will make it so that you can say, here are 25 questions that are of comparable magnitude, complexity, scope, but they are fundamentally different questions. And you're saying that the students will get 3 questions or 5 questions or how many questions that are randomly sampled from that pool. I use that in my lab class, more specifically the pre-labs for my lab class, where students have to read over their lab report. I'm going to phrase it, lab manual before they go into the lab. And this is a mechanism in order to test them out if they evaluate different parts of the lab, if they read different parts of the lab manual. And so I have 25 questions. They distribute 3 randomly to each student, and it provides, again, a mechanism for them to evaluate if they've read it, but it randomizes it in such a way that students may not necessarily help other students after they've actually solved that problem. Unless they get the same question, of course, if they're sampled off of that. You can mix random sampling with algorithmic if you want, in order to add an additional level of complexity out there. Notifications. This is when the assignment is set up so that students will get an email that the assignment is due. That when that student gets that email is dependent upon what that student has indicated in his or her settings about when she or he wants to get those emails. Some students want to be notified 36 hours beforehand. Some students want to be notified 6 hours beforehand. It's up to them to decide how they want to go about doing it. And the last part are the assigned tos. And the assigned tos dictate how the assignment is assigned. So you can indicate that this specific course, or let me phrase that, we can indicate a series of times connected to specific people or all the students in the class. So let me step up off of here and first indicate, because I have set this to be late with deduction, I actually have 2 deadlines. I have the deadline when the students should submit before they get deductions. And then I have a final deadline when you're not going to accept any deductions. Every single class out here where students submit will always have at least a final deadline that's available. And that might be when you've submitted your grades. Because once you submit your grades, you're not going to accept any submissions from your students, period. But you may want to actually move that earlier than the end of the quarter that's out there. And this provides a mechanism in order to control this. So in other words, because of this approach, I have 3. If I were to actually not accept late, I would have only 2 because I only have 1 deadline that's out there. Now I can indicate who gets access to these dates. So I can say everybody. So every student that's in my class will have the same start date and the same end date. However, when a student has enrolled in the class, if I select on here, I can select a student's name on here, and then I can identify that that student may have a different date and time. For example, if that student has accommodations, 50%, 100%, whatever is necessary, I may want to give a different date and time for that student to submit off of it. If I have different sections, multiple sections in the course, I have the ability in order to identify the sections. I only have 1 section here. I can say that only section 1 will have this deadline, and a different section may have a different deadline. So for example, in my large general chemistry classes where I teach 500 students, I have 16 sections. Each section focuses on a group of students that have access, that have their labs and their discussions at specific designated times in the week. And that's meant in order to separate them so you have the opportunity in order to stagger them and use the same lab infrastructure for the entire class that's out there. if you make it so that the deadlines for submission of lab reports or discussion reports or other things like that that's associated with a specific section, you use this in order to be able to organize and structure that accordingly. I can then add more assigned tos and organize them in different ways. This is not overly impressive because I don't have people enrolled in this course. I probably should create a demo course with fake students in order to be able to do this. So I'm going to remove these things. I'm going to make this as everybody, and I'm going to save it. And if I've done everything right, it will not give me an error like right now. So I've done something wrong. The number of attempts penalty field is necessary. So it goes up here and it basically says, I need to identify the uh, number of allowed penalty field. The number of allowed attempts penalty field. So in other words, I click on here, uh, I can answer the question. If you allow your students to attempt multiple question times, you may provide a penalty to be applied to each attempt after the first. For example, a correct answer, the second penalty will incur 10%, and then they'd have only a maximum of 9%. In other words, you can make it so that the students don't just come in and throw multiple questions down or multiple submissions. This provides a penalty. I can make it just as easily as 0, saying there's no penalty, and it's the best of as many submissions as they want without any limitations off there. This is up to you and your pedagogy in order to be able to implement that. I can press save. And then now I've created my assignment subject to those things. Those are a lot of things in order to address. I may want to actually create this as a template, which is accessed under the dashboard. And that will create a template in the same way that I create an assignment here. And then I can just grab that in and implement all those changes or most of those changes. So I don't have to redo them every time, because it may be, if you just change a number differently, it will have a different experience for those students and it can be a pain. Anyways, Madeline asked a question in the chat. Can adapt assignments be integrated into Canvas? Yes. Adapt can pass grades back via LTI to Canvas and several other learning management systems. And we just implemented a new system using the API. And the API allows you to press a button in order to generate all your assignments and link them all up automatically without having to go through the pain of manually linking them together. Once the course is linked to the Canvas course, then anytime a student submits it, it automatically gets processed within seconds to Canvas. There's a second part to your question. Connect chemistry that you use. Okay. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. Students are notified of due dates. So I mentioned the notification before. Connect homework grades for each student is integrated in their overall grade. So I think I got the what you wrote down there. If I missed something, please let me know. Because I'm a chemist, I'm particularly interested in order to make sure that we replicate everything that's available, including Connect Chemistry and other infrastructures, but of course within an open environment.
Yeah, it's just that the grade that they get is incorporated into the overall grade because they can make homework with Connect around 10%. So it'll take that into consideration when it calculates their ongoing grades.
Right. So with Canvas, all the external vendors just push the grade straight to Canvas and let Canvas do the infrastructure on how you mix them and match them accordingly. The values that we have that I put in here in terms of penalties and things like that, those will be folded into the grades or the scores that are passed back. But it should have similar functionality. If there's a function or a feature that we're not that we don't have that they have, I'm very receptive in order to hear about them, because again, we're trying to take the place of the commercial product. So it can be a bit daunting in order to address all the different features and things that we have in
Right.
place. That's one of the reasons why there's a bit of complexity in terms of building these assignments instead of just making it super simple, because different people want different things. And again, we want to be able to knock out the commercial publishers across the board. So you'd ask the question, largely an affirmation. Thank you, Amita. So let's go back into our assignment. So I'm going to click on assignment. This is empty. I haven't added any questions to it. And I have a series of things on the side here. This is very similar to what I had on the course side that I went over yesterday. Uh, I'm going to ignore case study notes. That's a more advanced feature. That's not important for this conversation. I can go through a summary in order to give me a snapshot of how I am organizing this assignment. This is convenient if you just want to be able to get a quick view of what's going on. I can go to properties. These properties look nearly identical to the properties that I added to here, with the exception of now I have a URL link that goes to my assignment. If I want to be able to use that in a variety of different ways, I can send it out via email to students in order to remind them that they need to complete this assignment. I can link it in to a variety of different platforms. I can embed them as iClicker, not iClickers, iframes. I can do the same thing with this QR code, which is essentially a graphical description of this thing. This is useful, at least I found this useful in videos where I may have a question that I want students to address while I'm going through a video, and then I snap it right down there and say, here's the QR code, take a look at it and access it. So the students that are pulling up their phones can pull their phones, scan it in, and directly get the question right there. So, but the rest is the same that you use in order to create them, and you can come in and start to modify them as you see fit. Now, we went through most, if not all of that last week. I'm making it a little bit slow here. Now, there are additional properties here that we weren't able to go over last week. I meant yesterday. Now I want to be able to go through these things. So let's go to the control panel. The control panel gives you the state of what you're sharing with students at any one time. So right now, the students are shown their scores. Uh, they aren't showing solutions. They aren't showing the statistics. Um, they are allowed to see the points per question. Sometimes I may not want to have them be able to see the points per question. They don't see the question titles. They just have question one, question two, question three. Um, this right here is a bit more unique. This, if I click this as, should we having a bug here? No. Okay. So if you click that as hidden, you will have a situation so that we put random names down for the students so that graders will not see the names of the students that they are grading. This will eventually be extended to allow it so that this faculty member or the instructor will also not see the students' grades. So you can make an argument that they can do the whole class, do the whole grading and everything that's in place without knowing who they are actually grading at any one time. It provides a blind aspect in order to come in and say you're 100% blind in the way that you're grading. So it is everyone gets the same experience that's out there. Um, and then you have the ability in order to get the UR view. I'm going to skip over that.